No one felt the burn of young Dolph's demise greater than Key Glock. More than collaborators, they were family, cousins by marriage, blood.
Did you feel like that's kind of what happened with Dolph, where you saw like, there was just all of a sudden everybody was a young Dolph fan?
And in the almost 2 years since young Dolph's passing, Key Glock is still processing his cousin's death, putting the pieces together, weighing the fake love and true hate Dolph garnered up in the past few years since he left us. Thankfully, and for the first time, we're getting closer to the truth.
That's just a normal thing when death occurs. It's just like, I ain't gonna say it's wrong to show love, but if it ain't genuine, why do it?
Because you see, nothing is as simple as it seems. Most hits in the hood aren't just hits. Something is almost always fueling it. And the search for the truth regarding Dolph's passing has led many of us outside of the hood to turn to the law for answers. And the law answered, all right, giving us these 2 killers on a platter, and a third who they claim was the mastermind.
It was the public's first look at 43-year-old Hernandez Govan since his indictment. The man prosecutors say recruited co-defendants 24-year-old Justin Johnson and 32-year-old Cornelius Smith to kill Adolph Thornton, a.k.a. Young Dolph.
But if you got ears on the street, if you've been following hood news, then you know that this story don't fit right. There are missing pieces. First off, Hernandez Govan, the man they say set this entire hit up, had no incentive to take out Dolph, no recorded beef with Dolph or the PRE outfit, and he definitely was no millionaire either. For him to have planned a hit on Dolph, he had to be getting something out of it, something monetary. Someone had to be paying his goofy ass. Who? We are going to explore that because the cops have left us high and dry in that regard. Then we turn to the killer, the pawns who took out Dolph, Justin Johnson and Cornelius Smith. Justin Johnson had a whole history with the PRE in a way that no one noticed until his diabolical act of terror. All of a sudden, homies started noticing him in the background of images that featured Dolph. And then there was a whole rumor that Key Glock was his homie, a rumor that came with receipts. Of course, this case was going to get wild and out of hand. There's so much that happened in the background that the law's never going to know. But for those of us who know, those of us who have been able to fill in the missing pieces of Dolph's puzzling demise, it is our duty to draw up the bigger picture. So as the 3 suspects prepare to face the law, let's take a look at things from Key Glock's perspective. There's some things he knows that he ain't saying because he's no snitch. As a former street homie, he definitely knows that whenever there's an elimination of a big cat like Dolph, it almost always got something to do with some shit that's happening politically on a street level. Yes, you heard that right. I'm telling you that the odds state that young Dolph's assassination wasn't some random act of violent jealousy. And yes, there's a lot more happening in the background than you'd ever get from your tabloid or late night PM news. And we are going to uncover it together. Let's see what truth Key Glock can reveal to us about young Dolph's passing.
Guess who's made it to the UK, yeah? It's Dolph.
You live?
To say Dolph and Key Glock were tight would be a criminal understatement. They was blood, moved like it, and acted in line. Y'all already know this, but Glock was signed to Dolph's label, pre-Paper Route Empire. And it wasn't just that they collaborated to release an album called Dumb and Dumber, which was insanely successful and peaked at number 8 on the Billboard 200. It became a defining album in young Dolph's career. Now I could go on and wax philosophical about the impact these cousins had on themselves and their career, and we would be here all day. What you need to know is that when Dolph was alive, Key Glock was his blood true and true. And I mean that in every sense of the world. More than blood, he was a true student of the game Dolph was dishing out. Loyalty, independence, and that holy paper. And after his passing, he's stayed consistent, stayed in his own lane like Dolph would have wanted. And that's why it's pretty concerning to discover that one of the 3 men who killed Dolph, Justin Johnson, was Key Glock's homie. Now make no mistake, I ain't saying that Glock had anything to do with his cousin's death. We can't jump to that kind of conclusion. What I'm doing is peeling off the layers like I said I would for you to see that you could be dining with the devil all your life and not know it. And you could know it like Dolph did and make the fatal mistake of thinking you can tame the devil. Now let's get back to the whole Glock Justin Johnson conundrum. Justin Johnson was one of these 2 killers that took out Dolph on the 17th of November 2021 when he was getting cookies for his mama in front of Makeda's homemade butter cookies. And this detail is important because for him to have caught Dolph lacking, he had to be aware of Dolph's routine. And for him to get that close, he had to have been in Glock's fold. Now no one knows how long he and Glock were rolling. What we know is that in the years that led to Dolph's demise, Justin Johnson was close enough that he appeared in a couple of pictures and videos with Key Glock. In this image taken from Glock's hot music video, you can even him in an orange jacket in the background, sitting amongst the homies like he ain't some venomous snake in green grass. And that probably was why in the immediate aftermath of Dolph's tragic killing, Glock was nowhere to be found. While homies were expecting some message of pain or some impassioned speech from the cuz, he laid incredibly low, definitely grieving and probably probably slamming his head into a wall as he wondered how he let a wolf in the barn house. But that's where the error begins. Justin Johnson was no wolf. He was a dog on an errand, a dog that was paid to do dog things and kill someone that he had no direct beef with. At least none that Dolph, Glock, or the general public was aware of. Or wait, maybe they were. Maybe there was a beef that was simmering beneath the surface that none of us knew about because we don't live in Memphis. I'll answer that question in a minute. In the meantime, Justin Johnson was on the run. Some people snitched, and soon enough, Justin and his homie, Cornelius Smith, were nailed as the prime suspects in the case. Justin Johnson took flight. He had promised to turn himself in, but he didn't. The rat skipped Memphis and went on off to Indiana, where he supposedly lay low until the cops got him on an unrelated charge that saw him hauled back to Memphis to face the consequences of his action. And he's lucky they got him, because if they hadn't, the streets would have done him in. I hear his rap name is Straight Drop. Well, the jokes write themselves, because if he wasn't in police custody as we speak, they would have dropped him straight up. And now you might be wondering why I would think that. And even if you wanted to believe me, you might be asking for receipts to support my argument. And I got what you're asking for. Trust me, because so far, he's been assaulted time and again behind bars by peeps who obviously got a score to settle in Dolph's name. If he was in the streets, he would have already been 6 feet under. Because since Dolph died, and since Justin Johnson's incarceration, peeps, innocent or not, have been falling right, left, and center. And it ain't just regular street rats. We're talking big players, homies that run entire blocks. I'm talking about the recent death of a big cat called Joshua Taylor.
Yeah, we start with that breaking news tonight. We've been told by Memphis police that a high-profile gang member was killed in a shooting in Orange Mound this afternoon. This is according to family members who tell us Joshua Taylor was named a person of interest in the young Dolph murder case back in February of 2022.
The cops knew him as Josh Taylor, but on the streets, his name was CEO Teasy, head honcho of the Trilla Mafia gang. The Trilla Mafia is, or at least was, at its peak, one of the most formidable gangs in Memphis. Big names rolled with players from the gang, and young Dolph was one of them. But we are getting ahead of ourselves, because we're going to get to that later. What you must know now is that CEO Teasy's death was no accident, and the man was head of the same gang that Justin Johnson was rolling in when he killed young Dolph. In fact, CEO Teasy was named a person of interest in the young Dolph murder case in February 2022 and was wanted on several charges, including theft of property between $10,000 and $60,000 and possession of a prohibited weapon. Now, if you've been following closely, you probably know where I'm going with this. A hit on someone as big as young Dolph is no joke. You don't take a big cat out like that if you don't have the blessings to do so. And when you are a part of a gang, you really need those blessings, or you'd be acting out of pocket and out of line. And since Justin Johnson was a Trilla Mafia gang member, who do you think gave him the blessing? Your guess is as good as mine. But hey, the story gets even bigger than that, because you can now see a sensible explanation for why Justin Johnson was in those images and music videos with Dolph and Glock. He was part of the Trilla Mafia, and Dolph was cool with the Trilla Mafia. He might not have been a gangbanger himself, but he was cool enough to be considered an ally. For many rappers who watched rappers like Dolph get all cozy and comfy in the hometown they was raised in, they was too close for any long-lasting comfort. In fact, rappers like Boozy advocate every now and again that anyone who makes it in their hometown should skedaddle from that town to somewhere safe, somewhere where they wouldn't become a victim of jealousy. In his interview with Vlad, Boozy said, "I advise everybody once they get money, get out they city, because that's when the hatred gun come." But is that what this death was? Another jealousy-fueled act of gun violence on a successful rapper in his hometown? Is that what this was? The media would want you to think that, but I firmly believe it runs deeper. Dolph wasn't stupid. He knew that part of his city. And in his own words, he knew how to stop his incredible wealth from becoming a sign of his superiority. But also, if you've been a longtime fan of Dolph, following him before all this press of doom and gloom, you know that the homie made it clear time and time again that no one, absolutely no one, was gonna make him leave Memphis. I mean, his debut album was titled King of Memphis. It don't get clearer than that. And that's what sparked the whole beef with Yo Gotti and his crew, where we eventually had one of Gotti's boys, Black Youngstar, spraying Dolph's whip with a 100-bullet tsunami back in February of 2017.
The dangerous shootout sent dozens of bullets flying into houses and cars, nearly hitting children.
I ain't fired nothing. I don't know nothing. I ain't see nothing. I ain't do nothing.
Police sources say the shooting involved 2 rappers. Later, a rapper named Young Dolph appeared to brag he survived the shooting in a bulletproof SUV.
But while Black Youngstar couldn't drop Dolph, it was a beef incredibly close to home that would take down the PRE boss. Because you see, this story ain't some tale of jealousy. Jealousy was a familiar beast to Dolph. He'd been making paper since he was 12. The real story of how Dolph met his untimely demise is a tale of betrayal. And before you jump to any conclusions, just stay with me. Because if you are not familiar with the sequence of events I'm about to relay to you in the next couple of minutes, then you have no idea how this is is going to evolve. The tale of betrayal had everything to do with young Dolph's ties with the Trilla Mafia gang, the same gang that his killer, Key Glock's homie, was a part of. Now, like I said before, Dolph was no gangbanger, not in the true sense of the word. He was too rich for that shit. But the head honcho of that gang, J Money, was. And he looked up to Dolph like he was his big brother. But you see, J Money was no Key Glock. Sure, he was down with some of young Dolph's principles, loyalty and getting the paper, but J Money was also incredibly reckless. And by reckless, I'm not talking about some tame teenage action. I'm talking about serious street action. At the age of just 18, J Money, whom the cops know as Jerome White, was charged in the fatal shooting of a vehicle that was driving down Birdsong Ferry Sugar Creek. 6 people were in the car, including 19-year-old Denzel Monroe, who just happened to be J Money's homie. All of them were killed in the shootout. Official records state that Denzel had tried to come down from the vehicle to stop his friend from shooting, but J Money just kept on spraying at the car and Denzel was hit. Now, it's unclear how J Money beat those charges, but somehow he continued living life as a free man. Free enough that he had a thriving rap career. I don't even think thriving was the right word. He was on the path toward becoming the industry's next big thing. I mean, think about it. On top of the existing connections he already had with young Dolph, the man was also on a first-name basis with Chief Keef. You can see him in this photo hovering over Chief Keef. And then there is this one, just to clear any doubt. By the time J Money would turn 20, everyone knew that it was only a matter of time. His homies were just waiting for his big hit, a viral hit that would launch him to superstardom, the introduction of J Money to the world. Unfortunately, it would never come, because on the 20th of August 2016, at exactly 3:15 a.m., Karma caught up with 20-year-old Jerome White. Karma came in the form of 36-year-old Freddie Yarber, and he had a gun. J Money bled to death in the parking lot of a Memphis nightclub. Now you can imagine how much this would have hurt young Dolph. That was his homie. But hey, and this detail I'm about to tell you is very important because it was going to come back later to bite him in the ass. On the surface, it appeared like Dolph didn't do nothing about J Money's killer. He didn't make the streets go crazy for J Money, and he didn't hunt the killer by, say, putting a bounty out. And while some of y'all might say 12 got to Yarber first, you must know that this was a revenge hit. I'm not advocating violence, but in that world, there are many ways to make the dead pay, let alone an alive convict with a gang behind it. But I feel that Dolph's biggest error was not letting the streets go when he leveled up, because while he didn't know it at the time, he was quickly becoming a house cat visiting street cats in the alley on the weekend. But hey, there was bigger fish to fry at the time, cause the Trilla Mafia was on the path of a nuclear meltdown. Word on the street was that before J Money was even killed, the Trilla Mafia gang already had its issues. But when J Money passed, the cracks in the Trilla Mafia family turned into a full split. Brothers were beefing on brothers, homies turning on themselves, and Dolph was caught in the middle of it all. Eventually, when the dust settled, there were only 2 factions left, the remnants of the original Trilla family and the brand new Double R Boy. Big Scar, one of Dolph's homies, was part of the creators of the Double R Boy, and the 2 R's stood for rich and reckless. But Big Scar was far from reckless. In fact, you could say he was a refined, finished version of Dolph, kind of like Key Glock, because while Dolph would keep all of the beef on the table, Big Scar tossed that beef to the dog.
What you think the key is to stay out of rap beef and
Stay in your own line like how I do. Like you don't never see me. You ain't never see me on there yelling the phone talking about this woo woo woo. I'm moving a woo woo woo. You ain't never see me in no crowd of niggas in the.
With the split official, Dolph found himself with friends and close allies on both factions that now hated each other bitterly. And if he wasn't careful, they was going to turn that hate on him. So what would you have him do? Well, any true Dolph fan would tell y'all that the one quality that made Dolph such a beloved outsider was his utter stubbornness in the face of anything that tried to stop him from getting what he wanted. The man won the game of life. He got his money right. No one had the right to tell him nothing, right? Wrong. Because you see, the problem was the fact that this was not an industry play. This was street politics, and the rules change every day. You have to stay a student of the game. You can't afford to lose the script, because what started out as just disses and tensions between Trilla Mafia and Double R was about to become a full-blown war. And that war came when a Double R affiliate named BG got taken out by Trilla Mafia hitter C-Mode. BG was in a car with 3 of his friends at a red light when his Trilla Mafia ops got a drop on his location and hunted him down. C-Mode go crazy, and another Trilla Mafia affiliate named Zay pumped lead into the front seats until BG was past tense. No one knows where the beef began, but we know where it ended, with BG 6 feet under. Go Crazy would later take the fall, confessing to the shooting, absorbing all charges, and letting C-Mode walk a free man. But this did nothing to the beef between factions, because the moment BG died, the war in the hood there in Memphis went atomic, and for the first time, it seemed like Dolph had no choice. He had to pick a side, couldn't play both, right? But again, who was gonna tell Dolph that? No one. And so when BG died, Dolph kept 10 toes in the middle, choosing no sides and playing no favorites, because he was and had always been about the business. house. Meanwhile, just kept getting worse and worse. Not too long after the BG got hit, Double R struck back and took out Zay. By this time, C-Mode was in juvie dealing with some other charge. And when he heard what happened to Zay, it hurt him. It hurt him so hard that when he got out, he got on blood mode on site with his ops. From diss tracks to straight up threats, C-Mode quickly turned into a walking target for the Double R gang who didn't want double casualties for a response. Well, they got their wish, and Trilla Mafia took another hit below the belt that became the most defining death in the history of the gang, and the death that put a spotlight on Dolph's testy position. It was the death of D-Money, J-Money's younger brother, whom everybody expected Dolph would stay 100 for since his older brother got killed. That was what pushed Dolph into the court of street opinion, because like it wasn't bad enough that D-Money was killed by a Double R op, homies on the left were writing it into songs, adding fuel to the flame, insult to injury, diss upon disrespect. With D-Money gone, several Trilla Mafia members were moving kamikaze, like they wanted to self-destruct, like they just wanted to see the world burn. The leaders of the gangs needed to know who was on their side and who wasn't, and frankly, they didn't care who you was, even if you was an OG as big as Dolph. I don't know if Dolph didn't get the memo or if he misread the signs, but this is when he made the worst possible move ever. He signed Big Honk, and from then on, many peeps on the street just knew that it was a matter of time. Why? Well, because everyone knew that Big Honk was the one who killed D-Money. For many watching both sides of the crosswalks, this was the height of betrayal. To many, Dolph had become persona non grata. He had chosen a side by this move, the side of the enemies of the Trilla Mafia. And that's why you see that most, if not all, of the suspects the cops arrested in the aftermath of Dolph's passing were all Trilla Mafia gang members. At least 98% of them. Even D-Money's mama appeared to shed no tears for Dolph when a friend of hers talked about the Memphis legend on Facebook after his death. She pointed out how Dolph hadn't done nothing after J-Money died, and how he had made the situation worse by signing J-Money's younger brother's killer after D-Money died. And you must know that all of these pieces I'm putting together is not me feeling my way into the discussion. This is what everyone regards as truth in the hood. Many believe that young Dolph's demise was a sanctioned hit, sanctioned by the higher-ups in the Trilla Mafia, sanctioned by none other than Joshua Taylor himself. And that's why when young Dolph was taken out, he was among the first set of suspects arrested before he was eventually released. They couldn't tie anything to him because, as head honcho, he had outsourced the organizing and planning to another, and that another was none other than the clown we now know as Hernandez Govan. I call this dude a clown because despite what he did, he was lucky enough to be released on bond.
Continuing that breaking news in young Dolph's case, Hernandez Govan, one of the prime suspects in the rapper's death, is now out of jail on a $90,000 bond.
Now, instead of his goofy ass to lay low, accept the restrictions the bond placed on him and hope to God he doesn't get some lengthy sentence that would see him getting freedom. After World War III, the clown began renegotiating conditions of the bond with the court. He began asking for privileges that even the judge couldn't wrap his head around, asking the court to allow him to go clothes shopping, grocery shopping, and wanting to get a full-time job. His requests were so ridiculous that the judge recently tore into him in an 8-minute speech.
Is that, Mr. Govan, you should be blessed that you are on bond. The only other resolution for Judge Dolph is to put you back in jail pending a disposition of these charges. Your lawyers have worked, yeomans have done a great job in getting you released on bond until these cases are settled.
And it's crazy, right? Because this is a man who just lost his daughter, Lotta Cash Desto, Lil Uzi Vert's artist, in a fatal shooting in Houston, Texas. You would think that the karma would have humbled him, but it didn't. And that's because all of these guys, they live by a set of rules that none of us can ever understand, no matter how hard we try. You might not like this comparison, but it's kind of like trying to understand how a soldier that has seen a lot of combat thinks. Everyone's a threat, target, and no one outside of their fold can or should trust. Dolph did not deserve to die. He didn't deserve to become another statistic done over by the streets he gave so much love to, but the street is the street. And even if all I've said here is a whole load of nonsense, one fact remains. Dolph was killed by one of his own people, in his own city, in his own hood. It wasn't random, and it wasn't the plans of three goofies. It was a whole conspiracy of a gang with a score to settle. If you enjoyed this expose, click on a video on your screen to watch even more interesting mini documentaries like this one, and I'll see you there.